Oh, hey there, gang. There's a scientist called Jacques Pangsep who's responsible for the discovery of a play circuit in the brain's central nervous system of rats. So if you attach a spring to a rat and you have another rat available for the rat who's restrained to play with, they will work against the resistance of the spring to try to get to the other rat to engage in play. So the play provides the incentive for the rat to perform the work to achieve that goal. This circuit is built in. We respond to incentives. Human beings, all animals, respond to incentives. I talk about this a lot, and I think it's of crucial importance that we discover ways to provide incentive without initiating force. So surely I can get someone to engage in an activity for money. Given enough money, somebody's going to engage in that activity. What's up, Jake? But where do I get the money? If I have to hold someone at gunpoint to get the money to provide the incentive for that person to engage in activity A. Activity A, though it may be valuable, the end result may be valuable, the means by which I get that individual to engage in the activity was wrong. So that's the wrong way to bring about that action. There are ways, there must be ways, to get individuals to engage in healthy, productive, beneficial behaviors beyond holding a gun to their head. If Jacques Pangsep's experiments are any indication, we will work just to engage in play, just to engage with others. And so the incentive is play. The incentive is social interaction. The incentive is that feeling of belonging, the dopamine hit we get from being amongst our peers, from interacting with others. Humans are social creatures just like apes are, just like rats are, just like fish are. The most simple organisms, if they have a nervous system, seem to thrive from social interaction. So where am I going with this? Obviously, we respond to incentives. One of those most powerful incentives is community. What happened over the weekend? Jake, you probably saw this firsthand. You're up there in DC. The change between the Unite the Right rally last year that resulted in a homicide and this year's event. Stark contrast, right? So last year, I think there were around 1,000 demonstrators who took part in the Unite the Right demonstration. Now, this attracted a less than savory group of characters. These people are despicable. Do I think that they're evil people? No, probably just misguided, probably the product of their environment, maybe they are evil, but I can't make that generalization of the whole group. Do I agree with their ideas? Absolutely not. I think any sort of ethnicity-based in-group preference is absurd. I think racism is absurd. I think it's counterproductive. And I think we saw a real-time example between last year and this year of what sort of incentive I'm talking about. And I've made the case before, I think, and probably not articulated that well, but I think, this is going to be an unpopular thing to say, I think racism is healthy. I think sexism, bigotry, homophobia, all of those things are healthy. And I'll try and explain why quickly. What happened between last year and this year? people came out and demonstrated. They had their tiki torches looking like fucking nutcases out here in public, talking about some racist bullshit that 99.9% of the population is disgusted by. What happened? They were met with an even greater number of people who were willing to say, you guys are wrong. The crowd that they attracted, I'm suggesting, they didn't know what was up. 1,000 people is way too many for a neo-Nazi rally. The number of people in the United States who identify as white nationalists is less than 1/1000% of the population. So what happened? These people are out here screaming all this Nazi bullshit, talking about racist ideas, and the people who were there firsthand who experienced it didn't show up the next year, did they? So when people express ideas about racism, you're advocating sexism, homophobia, transphobia, you hate Mexicans, you hate Asians, you hate white people, whatever it happens to be, whatever group you hate, whatever thing you hate, most people don't agree with you. Most people orient themselves toward love and acceptance and kindness. And when you proclaim these ridiculous ideas, you're not alienating others. You're alienating yourself. So you come out and say, all white people are racist. The people in your peer group, number one, are going to question that. Number two, they're going to marginalize you, and you are going to become isolated. So the incentive, as I've already explained, as demonstrated by experimentation, our incentive is to be a part of the group. This is an evolutionary mechanism. What happens to people that get separated from the group in a tribal culture, in a hunter-gatherer culture? They starve to death. They freeze to death, they starve to death, they're murdered by wolves because they're separated from the pack. So we have an evolutionary mechanism that keeps us in that mutually beneficial peer group relationship. What happens to male chimps if they're too domineering and too tyrannical? They get ripped apart. The ones who engage in reciprocity and engage with the peer group, they're rewarded and they maintain that position across time. So the incentive here is to be a part of the whole. And when you come out and say ridiculous shit, you're no longer a part of the whole. You've marginalized yourself. You've quarantined yourself. And you end up like this group of 40 people in DC thinking you're going to have this massive support because the media has made it out like around every corner there's a Nazi. Under every rock there's a Nazi. Behind every tree you better watch out because there's a Nazi. When in reality, you get about 40 people to show up for this thing. This is a joke. And the media has been amplifying this thing like we're going to have brown shirts going through DC destroying homes. The reality of the situation is that when you proclaim ideas that no one agrees with, like white supremacy, black supremacy, homophobia, sexism, whatever it happens to be, these are unpopular ideas. And if you make it known that you hold these unpopular ideas unapologetically, you become unpopular. What happens when someone in your peer group says something racist? They get called out, right? What happens when they say something stupid, just generally stupid? They get called out. They do that enough times, they get marginalized. Oh, we're not going to call old so-and-so to come out this weekend because he's always talking about some bullshit. He's always saying unpopular things. It's tough to make the case for why racism is beneficial because the act of racial discrimination is not what I'm defending. What I'm defending is people's freedom to express ideas no matter how popular, no matter how unpopular. And the consequence of expressing those ideas when they are that unpopular, like neo-Nazism or anti-fascism, or socialism. People quarantine those individuals, and the incentive is for them to change their views so that they can reemerge and rejoin the group. It's built into us to want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And we're doing ourselves a disservice when we try and silence people with those unpopular ideas and we try and prevent them from digging their own graves. Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. We have to get past the idea that we're unable to deal with words, to deal with ideas, to deal with things that make us feel bad. How do you handle that sort of thing in your own life? If somebody says something that offends you, can you deal with it? Okay. So can a person who is the subject of that sort of discrimination, that sort of hatred, can they deal with it as well? More than likely, at the individual level. Challenge those ideas when they come up around you. That's how you do your part. Trying to silence people from saying undesirable things is not the way to go about it. There is a voluntaristic solution to the problems we face in society, and that's to let people engage in such a way that they are going toward incentives and away from disincentives. Saying something racist disincentivizes participation in your peer group. Saying something that is not racist, the opposite, whatever it has, something kind, let's say, about everyone, that incentivizes people to integrate you into their peer group. Let these ideas sort themselves out. You saw what happened over the course of 1 year. Oh man, look at all these idiots carrying torches. The next year, there's 40 people out there. And we see where the majority of the violence is coming from, unfortunately. So the most compassionate, you would think. So you have these white supremacists juxtaposed with the Antifa demonstrators, right? And the narrative the media gives you is that these people are against hate. They're against authoritarianism, ethno-nationalism, whatever it happens to be. When you take that evil group out of the equation, there's only a handful of them in DC demonstrating. And look at what's happening in Virginia, for example. The counter-protesters have no one to rail against, so they're going against the police, against the state, against journalists, against people who are out there just to observe the event. You have journalists being physically attacked for being present and filming these masked, I'm hesitant to call them counter-protesters because there's nothing to oppose there. They have police escorts as they berate the police. Who are the authoritarians? Who are the aggressors? We could make it out to be the neo-Nazis last year because there was a bunch of people whom, in my opinion, were misled as to what Unite the Right was. If I say Unite the Right is, well, we need to get together libertarians and conservatives and people who are right of center and people who are in opposition to socialism and all of the death that comes along with that. We need to get these people together so that we can get some positive change going. That sounds pretty good, right? But if you get to that event that I just organized and it's actually people in hoods with tiki torches, I think I'm going to find something else to do this weekend. And we saw it happen. They got there, demonstrated, there was a counter-protest. Someone was murdered as a result of that because the media has whipped people into this frenzy where we have this frustration-aggression hypothesis. I become so frustrated I have to lash out at something. I don't have an outlet for that aggression. I don't have a way to deal with that frustration. And so I run someone over with my car. I start breaking windows. I start assaulting police and journalists. I start assaulting other people who are just as misguided and misinformed as I am. Is this the way we move forward? Is this progress? No. The way we move forward is to let ideas be expressed and challenge those ideas with civil discourse. Throwing sticks and rocks and assaulting people and screaming and no platforming. This is not how we achieve anything worth achieving, let's say. If our goal is dissent and distrust and fear and anxiety, we're doing a hell of a job getting there. And in conclusion, I'm nobody. These are just ideas. These are observations and the conclusion I'm making based on those observations. You have to let people dig their own graves. You have to let your enemy make mistakes. And you have to assume that when you're engaging in dialogue with someone else, there's a chance they know something that you don't. And you should be inquiring, trying to empathize with that person's perspective. If you can fully understand and fully articulate the opposite perspective, perhaps you're going to be more effective at bringing people over to your side or reaching some sort of middle ground. Food for thought. Have a good day, gang. Take it easy, Jake. We'll see you, man.